Greetings Mavericks and new viewers. Tonight, direct and live from the Maverick News Network World Studios. This is Maverick News with Rick Walker.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the Maverick News Channel. Great to have everybody here. Welcome back, Maverick family. Lots to talk about tonight. Russian naval commander apparently killed with a car bomb. Ukraine claiming responsibility. We'll give you the details on that. Houthis firing on U.S. naval ships. And yet we're not hearing too much about it. And perhaps the story that's making the loudest headlines tonight, Donald Trump's choice for border czar, Tom Homan, saying Canada represents an extreme security vulnerability. Not good. I kind of wonder where all that's leading, especially after all of that talk about invading Canada from Tucker Carlson and company. Very interesting development, I would say. Stay with me.
You know, someone very profoundly once said many years ago that if fascism ever comes to America, it'll come in the name of liberalism.
Well, I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on Earth.
The entire world is watching.
Every dictator, every crazy dictator in the world is watching. The world is watching. On TV,
the entire world is watching.
On social media.
But the entire world is watching, and yes, they are seeing what we have apparently bravely been willing to say that others are thinking.
Stand for freedom. Literally stand for freedom. Let's get this done. The entire world is watching.
We're at war with the most dangerous enemy that has ever faced mankind in his long climb from the swamp to the stars.
Maverick News. Maverick News. Maverick News.
Let me have more control of my own destiny.
The world is watching.
He's a fighter. He's a survivor. President Trump, defiant, strong. He is determined to make America great again. Pay tribute to the 45th President of the United States with this collectible t-shirt from the Maverick News Memorable Moments collection. Even a would-be assassin's bullet could not stop him. Instead, he emerged with his fist in the air ready to fight. For freedom. Get your Trump Fighting for Freedom t-shirt with any donation of $30 or more to Maverick News. There are two iconic artistic designs to choose from. But there is only one way to get these. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Support free speech. Free media. Support Maverick News. Call 1-866-248-1490 or order online at supergeeks.tv.
Okay, given that we are based in Canada, even though we have a sizable audience in the United States, this is a cross-border issue, so it has to be our lead item tonight. In recent statements, Tom Homan, who has been tapped by President-elect Donald Trump to oversee border issues, has labeled the Canadian border as, quote, an extreme national security vulnerability for the United States. So, here's what Homan has been saying. he has pointed out that the northern border with Canada is less fortified compared to the southern border with Mexico. He argues that this makes it an easier route for individuals from countries of concern to enter the United States, referring to them as special interest aliens. He's expressed concerns about the possibility of terrorists using Canada as a gateway into the United States. He has emphasized the need for immediate action to secure the Canada-U.S. border, suggesting a re-evaluation of border security measures. His appointment suggests a focus on tightening controls, not just at the southern border, but also its less discussed northern border here, the Canadian border. I think in the United States, a lot of people kind of view Canada as this kind of a friendly, cold place with a lot of ice and a few igloos where people just apologize to each other all the time. Because we've been so used to living with the largest unprotected border in the world for so long until after 9/11. And now it's a much different story. And even after 9/11, since 9/11, the country has changed a lot. This is not the Canada that we used to have. It is much different. Homan is honing in on that and had this to say about it.
Overrun. And the problem with the northern border is a huge national security issue because in my 34 years, a lot of SIAs, special interest aliens, from countries that sponsor terror or are known not to be our friends, come through the northern border because they're an organization that have a lot of money and they can afford to fly into Canada to come across that northern border because they know a lot fewer officers up here. In Thousand Islands, you can cross St. Lawrence River in 45 seconds. So it's an extreme national security vulnerability on the northern border, and it's one of the things I'll tackle as soon as I'm at the White House.
More agents that would be along it? What would be
You
different?
absolutely need to have more agents up here. You need to end catch and release. If you're going across the northern St. Lawrence River or come across the lake or on foot, they need to know right from the start, you can come, but you're going to be arrested, you're not going to be released, and we're going to remove you. It's not going to be like the Biden administration, we're going to process you and release you and never to show up in court. You're not walking away, we're going to lock you up. So more agents will end catch and release. And look, there has to be, President Trump has to work with Prime Minister Trudeau and say, look, you need to enforce whatever immigration laws you have because this is a gateway into the United States. So there needs to be some negotiation between the two governments. But until then, we're going to do what President Trump did before. End catch and release. Put the Remain in Mexico program, something similar to Canada. Up in Canada, do the same thing because the Remain in Mexico program was a game changer. He needs to work with all these countries for repatriation. So there's a lot of policy things that needs to be done, but we've done it once before, so it's going to be a little easier this time. But there has to be an understanding from Canada that they can't be a gateway to terrorists coming into the United States.
It's amazing how quickly the political landscape can change. Huge shift. I'll tell you that. So, Homan is emphasizing the need for immediate action to secure the border. He's been critical of what he perceives as Trudeau's lax immigration policies. He believes these policies could be enabling an indirect route for illegal immigration into the U.S., as well as potentially allowing entry to individuals who should be barred from crossing. He has described Trudeau as terrible. He's on record saying that, echoing sentiments from some conservative circles in the U.S. about Trudeau's progressive politics. He advocates for Canada to find a better man to lead, implying Trudeau's leadership has been detrimental to border security. He's no fan of Trudeau. During a conference, Homan was quoted saying to Canadians, "You need to find a better man. He's terrible." Those are his exact words, reflecting his strong personal and political disagreement with Trudeau. He's sort of the anti-Trudeau guy. He is the anti-Trudeau. in many respects. There's been mixed reaction to all of this. Some Canadians and political figures, especially those from the Conservative Party, have echoed Homan's concerns about illegal crossings and security. Conservative critic Tom Homan, for instance, has criticized the Trudeau government's handling of border security. While some support Homan's hardline approach to border security, others are viewing his comments as an overstep, potentially straining U.S.-Canada relations at a time when cooperation on many fronts obviously is pretty crucial. So today, Canada's Immigration Minister, Mark Miller, addressed all of this after giving a speech to the Vancouver Board of Trade. We have that exchange with reporters in this post-speech scrum impromptu news conference. Here's Mark Miller responding to Tom Homan through questions leveled at him from reporters today.
This is my colleagues in Ottawa. Donald Trump's new border czar, Tom Homan, has said there's an extreme national security vulnerability along the Canada-US border, that terrorists stream from Canada to south of the border, and there needs to be tough conversations with Ottawa on this issue. Have you talked to Homan at all, or anyone else from Trump's inner circle, and do you agree with his assessment?
Well, as you know, the Prime Minister has already spoken to President-elect Trump. I look forward to speaking to Mr. Homan directly. This is not something that we've done yet. I think when it comes to our southern border and the U.S.'s northern border, you see there the alignment of interests and making sure that it is safe, that it is secure. We share information with our American partners, and we're able to apprehend folks that cross the border in a regular fashion, or in a fashion where they're not entitled to do it. And that's important, and that needs to stay the same. We have had equal challenges with respect to the flow coming from the U.S. into Canada, and have taken measures to secure it and to close some of the ways people get in here in an irregular fashion. That's going to continue. I think in all these situations, we do have to continue to work in the national interest of Canadians, which in my view is aligned with the current administration and the one that is coming in to replace it. And I expect that conversation to continue fully, and I expect there to be some tough conversations. We have had, over the last number of years, volumes of asylum seekers coming into Canada, for example, in historically high numbers. A lot of reasons that have very little to do with Canada. But we have to make sure that those flows come in a way that is regular. There is a way to come to Canada. There's a way not to come to Canada, and continue to make those measures regardless of what the administration to the south is and on any particular set of 4 years. So that'll continue, and I actually look forward to those conversations.
Okay, and the follow-up is, if the number of clandestine migrants streaming into Canada increases exponentially because of a Trump clampdown, can the U.S. still be considered a safe third country?
Can we expect the U.S. to abide by the safe third country agreement that we have? That is an agreement that has allowed us to have a managed flow of migrants in the border that is so important to our economic relationship, the flow of goods, the flow of individuals. And we've proven throughout the last decade that we're able to manage it responsibly. Are there changes to be made at any particular point in time when we see behaviors changing, when we see our security agencies advising us to adopt a different posture? I think absolutely. Those are conversations that won't be had in public. They're ones that we'll work with the Americans to make sure that we are working in both our national interests.
Okay. So that's that issue in a nutshell, but it is just the beginning. And this makes me very nervous, these kind of comments coming from Homan, especially when I've been hearing, as you have, things that from online influencers like Tucker Carlson, Jackson Hinkle, Tim Pool, even Lieutenant Stephen Rogers, kind of suggesting, hinting at some sort of U.S. intervention in Canada, possibly even a military intervention, because Canada is seen as a threat to the United States because of this very issue. And now Trump's border czar is sort of pushing up against those exact kinds of comments, saying that Canada is indeed an extreme security vulnerability to the United States, an extreme terror risk, which we've talked about on the program before. What kind of response, what will the Trump administration do in this regard? What will Trudeau do? Mr. Diversity is Our Strength, the poster boy for the World Economic Forum, mass immigration, and the Prime Minister who says that Canada is the world's first post-national state, meaning that Canada doesn't even have its own culture or even identity. Weird stuff coming from the leader of a country, a sovereign nation. No wonder some people accuse him of being treasonous. I'll be right back.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals. Defenders of individual rights and freedoms. Credible. Trusted. Grounded in reality. Maverick News. Maverick News. Defending free speech. Free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
So what I'm getting from the Trump team, the vibe I'm getting anyway, after seeing these initial appointments being telegraphed by Trump, is that his administration this time around is going to be an I don't give a crap administration. His team, the team he's assembling, is basically in the I don't give a crap camp. That's why today Trump sent shockwaves through political circles when he announced that he intends to nominate Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz as the next Attorney General of the United States. Trump took to Truth Social to declare that Matt Gaetz, known for his staunch loyalty to the president-elect, will be tasked with leading the Department of Justice. This nomination follows a string of appointments aimed at filling key positions in Trump's administration. Matt Gaetz has been a figure of controversy and loyalty within the Republican Party. A lawyer by training, he graduated from Williams Mary Law School and has been a vocal critic of what he refers to as the weaponization of government agencies against political figures, particularly those aligned with Trump. So today he was out for a cruise with Charlie Kirk. In fact, it was Gaetz who was driving, and they posted this on social media. It's enough to trigger a liberal.
So they said that if we win, things will be greater than ever before, and Matt Gaetz has a new job.
Charlie Kirk's driver. I'm honored for the promotion.
We're making America great again, and we found Matt Gaetz some work.
So He was promoted to Charlie Kirk's driver, and it looks like he's going to get the position of Attorney General. And when I say that Trump seems to be putting together an I don't give a crap team, Matt Gaetz fits right into that. Here's an old clip of him that just really illustrates my point.
Is it safe to say that based off of your comments, you're suggesting that these women at these abortion rallies are ugly and overweight?
Yes.
What do you say to people who think that those comments are offensive?
Be offended.
Mm-hmm. Is it?
I rest my case. He doesn't give a crap. Okay? And that fits in with Tom Homan, too. He's obviously been tapped by Trump because he don't give a crap. And he's going to be hard-nosed and unapologetic. And that seems to be the tone that is being set thus far. Uh-huh. How do you like them apples? Oh, which brings me to Pierre Poilievre. Yeah, well, we'll talk about him more another night. He isn't making too many waves today, so we'll put him on the back burner, the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, and we'll have to see how Justin Trudeau responds to all of this, especially this stuff with Tom Homan. Very worrisome to me, quite honestly. Very, very worrisome. Yeah. And there's even a split in the reaction, really, to the Gaetz announcement today from Trump. Some GOP members, like House Majority Leader Steve Scalise, have expressed support, while others, like Max Miller, have called it a reckless pick, doubting Gaetz's confirmability due to his political history. So Trump has outlined that Gaetz will be responsible for ending the partisan weaponization of the justice system, protecting American borders, and restoring public confidence in the DOJ. And that is, I would say, at an all-time low. In fact, public confidence in all government institutions at this point, I would say, is at an all-time low, both in Canada and the U.S. and all through the Western countries. So this aligns with Trump's broader campaign promises to overhaul government agencies perceived as biased against him. It's a different ball game now, and as I have said multiple times, this time around with Trump, it feels different. This time feels different. The first go around with him, the tone was absolutely different. And this time around, yeah, he is definitely assembling a bit of a different team. Where is it all going to lead? I don't know. I don't know. Except that it's pretty clear. A lot of these guys are in the I don't give a crap camp. Yeah. So, in international news, in a very bold move that underscores the escalating tensions in the Ukraine-Russia war, Ukraine has reportedly executed a targeted car bomb attack in Sevastopol in Crimea. That's the port where the Black Sea Fleet is stationed. And so what do we know about this? Well, we know that a senior Russian naval officer identified as Captain Valery Trankovsky has been killed. Apparently an explosive device detonated under his vehicle, possibly under his seat, or the explosive device may have actually been mounted to the side of the seat that he was sitting in a car. And this attack is believed to have been orchestrated by Ukraine's security service. Of course, Crimea is occupied currently by Russia, and this is where it happened. Now, we do have video to confirm what we are telling you here tonight, and it is being reported widely. So this is, I say, very, very credible. This is not fake news. This is the real deal. And this is the guy who has been killed by Ukrainian operatives, I would say, in Crimea, Sevastopol. Ukraine calls him a war criminal. They say that he is responsible for targeting civilians. And that is why they went after him. That's what is being reported in Ukrainian media tonight. Here's a video of the SUV that he was in. And there's a still image of it. So you're getting pretty serious escalation even over there in Ukraine. So the bomb was placed under the driver's seat, or possibly on the side, as I say. And a source from the Security Service of Ukraine has confirmed their role in the operation, describing Trenkovsky as a, quote, war criminal whose actions justified the attack under the laws of war. So the blast did not result in other casualties, surprisingly, but the wreckage of the car and the site of the explosion have been sealed off by Russian authorities, who are treating the incident as an act of terrorism. So this assassination is part of a series of operations by Ukraine against Russian military and pro-Russian figures. It comes in the backdrop of heightened conflict, with Ukraine stepping up its efforts to strike at Russian military capabilities and morale, especially in occupied regions like Crimea. And while Russia has confirmed the attack, they have not yet named the officer killed, but the investigative committee has opened a case into what they are calling a terrorist attack. So targeted killings such as this increase the stakes in this conflict, particularly leading to retaliation from Russia possibly. And they also highlight Ukraine's capability to conduct operations deep within territories controlled by Russia, showcasing both their intelligence reach and the willingness to engage in unconventional warfare. And I said, boy, it's got to be 8 or 9 months ago now that you would see a shift in Ukrainian strategy, where they would begin to use more guerrilla warfare tactics just like this, because they are outgunned, outnumbered. They don't have the, or at least at that time, they didn't have the same level of resources at their disposal. And so they have been very creative. And this is an indication that they are employing more guerrilla warfare tactics in order to counter the confrontations that they have with Russian forces, which have greater numbers overall. International observers are closely watching these developments. And while some might see this as a justified act of resistance, others are afraid that it could spiral the conflict into further violence and retribution. And then there's that phone call that was said to have happened between Trump and Putin, and then the Russians denying it. And the report from the Washington Post indicated that Trump told Putin not to escalate, even within the Russian border, told him do not escalate the conflict, even in the area of Kursk. So did that conversation take place? We're not really sure. Not really quite clear. But if that conversation did take place, if it did happen, Putin is really thumbing his nose at Trump, because tonight Ukrainian forces are squaring off against some 50,000 Russian troops in the Kursk region. It's a really major escalation in the area where Ukraine has been conducting operations after their surprise incursion over the summer, where they've been able to hold on to that territory, and they are dug in. The Kursk region, just north of Ukraine, has become a focal point of military activity. Ukrainian forces control a sizable area there, but now they're under intense pressure from this really massive Russian contingent, 50,000 soldiers, coming up against the Ukrainians. Kursk's proximity to Ukraine makes it a critical zone. Zelensky has stated that the presence of these troops in Kursk is reducing Russia's ability to conduct offensive operations within Ukraine itself, essentially holding down a significant portion of the enemy's forces. And the figure of 50,000 includes both Russian forces and, reportedly, those 10,000 North Korean troops. And this unexpected alliance between Russia and North Korea adds a new dimension to the conflict, with some Ukrainian sources confirming North Korean involvement in direct combat operations. So despite being outnumbered, though, Ukraine is reinforcing its positions. Zelensky mentioned plans for, quote, considerably strengthening defenses on the fronts there in eastern Ukraine, where fighting has been most intense. And while exact numbers are hard to come by, previous estimates from U.S. intelligence suggested that Russian losses could be significantly higher than reported. So the Ukrainians are fighting with real resolve. However, these figures are often contested by Moscow, which has not provided recent updates on its own casualties. What we've heard over the past 2 days is that new records have been set in terms of the number of Russian soldiers who have been killed. 2 days ago, in excess of 2,000 were reported killed, and I believe over the last 24 hours, that record from 2 days ago has been broken again, and we're told, I believe the number that is being reported is something like 2,400 Russian troops, Russian soldiers killed, taken out of action as a result of this battle that is raging now in Kursk. The international community is, again, watching all of this develop, particularly after President-elect Donald Trump's recent call with Russian President Vladimir Putin, if indeed that actually took place. I'm inclined to think that it probably did. And despite what we apparently heard about what Donald Trump said to Vladimir Putin, Moscow has continued to amass forces, indicating a push for territorial gains before any potential negotiations. And I think that is really the key here. Putin wants to push the Ukrainians out of Kursk before Trump takes office, because he anticipates that there will be peace talks at that point, some sort of negotiation taking place, and he doesn't want Ukraine to hold that bargaining chip. So it's pretty clear that this is all about positioning in advance of sitting down at the table to talk. So this conflict has not only military but also humanitarian implications, and these attacks have damaged infrastructure like a dam near the front line in Donetsk, potentially threatening nearby villages with flooding. And so this whole situation really at this point remains fluid, with both sides adjusting to the new realities on the ground. The Ukrainian government has called for continued support from its allies, emphasizing the need for more infantry and equipment to counter the Russian advance. Yesterday I told you that European NATO leaders have met. They have discussed the possibility that the United States under a Trump administration might withdraw most, maybe even all support for the Ukrainians in this conflict. And if that's the case, we are told that Europe is already preparing to fill the gap. Whether that will happen or not, I don't know. But we are seeing that resources are being transferred, directed into Ukraine so that the Ukrainians can develop their own weapons manufacturing facilities, so that they will become then less directly dependent on the United States and its European allies at this point for weapons and support. And so that is a key part of their strategy moving forward. Another very surprising thing, this took me by surprise today, maybe it shouldn't have, but it did. We're getting reports that Ukraine could be in a position to develop its own nuclear weapons, a bomb, a nuclear weapon, within months, not years, within months. Of course, back in the 1990s, Ukraine gave up a lot of nuclear warheads in exchange for border security assurances from both the United States and Russia and European allies. That those assurances came to Ukraine through something called the Budapest Memorandum. Russia has simply thrown that into the dustbin with their invasion of Ukraine, by taking Crimea, by going in there. So journalist Maxim Tucker, in this interview with Times Radio, outlines what this is all about, this potential development of a nuclear weapon. And it was just about a week ago or so that Vladimir Zelensky gave that speech where he indicated they would rather join NATO, they choose NATO instead of a nuclear weapon or nuclear weapons. And he made a compelling argument at the time, which was taken out of context, I would say, by, pro-Russian media, where they were saying that he wants to have a nuclear weapon. But what he was really saying is that even back in the 90s, when Ukraine gave up the nuclear weapons, they did it because they had an eye on NATO membership. Giving up the nuclear weapons, but still having border security by eventually becoming a NATO member. So he says, we choose NATO instead of nuclear weapons. So that's what Zelensky said. But because we're hearing that NATO membership might be off the table altogether, and we're also hearing these reports that with a Trump administration, as they go into negotiations with Putin, there could be a condition that Trump will bring to the table, or a proposal that Trump will bring to the table, where they will guarantee that Ukraine will not be allowed to join NATO indefinitely, or maybe for about a period of about 20 years. Now, I personally have not heard those words come out of Trump's mouth, but it seems like what we're getting is what I would characterize as political trial balloons being floated by the future Trump administration in advance of them taking power. And that is one of the things I think that is out there as a trial balloon. You kind of put this stuff out in the media, which is a long time practice in politics. You put ideas out in the media without actually saying it yourself to gauge the reaction that you get. What kind of response will you get from world leaders, from Putin, from the public? And then if you get the kind of reaction that you are hoping for, or the reaction that you think you can live with, then you proceed and you actually make the announcement. But if it seems to not be working out the way you want it, then you back off and you adjust your position before you formalize your position in a public way. So I think that's partly what's going on here. But and maybe that's really what's going on here as well, with this talk of Ukraine reacquiring nuclear weapons. They had them before, although there's some discussion or maybe even disagreement over whether Ukraine would have actually had access to them in a way that would have allowed them to use, I think it was well over 1,000 nuclear warheads within its borders, whether they would have had the codes or if they would have been able to turn them into functional weapons after the fall of the Soviet Union, and they were within Ukrainian borders, but they gave them up regardless. Now it looks like Zelensky is potentially looking at reacquiring nuclear weapons. And in short order, because Ukraine just does not have the population, doesn't have the numbers to hold back Russian forces over the long haul. And that seems to also be the big question at this point. Who can hang on the longest, and who can hang on until a Trump administration takes office? And will that be enough if Ukraine is able to hold on until January and then Trump gets in? Will that even be enough? Because it's still not clear what position Trump will actually take vis-a-vis Ukraine. Even with Marco Rubio in the position of Secretary of State, it isn't entirely clear where he will come down on this particular issue. But here's Maxim Tucker, journalist on the Times radio interview, talking about a document that he has seen, which he says proves that Ukraine is on the verge or could acquire or develop in-house its own nuclear weapon in a matter of maybe 6 months, if Ukraine can hold on that long. Or maybe Putin will be, it's not even clear if Putin will be able to hold on that long. But here's Maxim Tucker.
If the US does withdraw support, then it couldn't be, it will take at least 6 months to develop a weapon that they can use, and they don't want it to be too late. The Russians are already at the gates of Kiev.
All right, well, let's start with the very simple question. What is this document you've seen, and what have you learnt, Maxim?
So this is a document produced by an influential Ukrainian think tank, which includes amongst its government advisors, who have said that Ukraine would be capable of producing nuclear weapons within months if the US was to abandon Ukraine. This is a lot shorter than what Western experts think. They had considered that Ukraine would need 4 years to develop a nuclear weapon. The Ukrainian government has stressed that it is not considering building a nuclear weapon, but this comes after Zelensky had said to Trump that Ukraine would either join NATO or develop nuclear weapons. Now, Zelensky has since walked that back, but it's clear here in Kiev that Ukrainians are really worried that with Trump in power, when he comes to power in January, the US will abandon Ukraine and it will be left to fend for itself. Even with the rest of the West supporting it, that won't be enough to hold the Russians back from taking strategic cities like Pavlograd or even Dnipro, which is home to 1 million people, and that would force them to consider something as dramatic as rearming. Now, rearming with nuclear weapons. Now, Ukraine gave up 1,734 nuclear strategic warheads in 1994 in exchange for guarantees of protection from the US, the UK, and Russia. It has considerable nuclear expertise, and it has remaining nuclear reactors that still operate. And this would be the basis, the document says, for developing nuclear weapons. So they would use plutonium extracted from spent fuel rods to develop a kind of a basic rudimentary bomb based on plutonium, not enriched uranium. And this would allow them to create what is quite a small yield tactical nuclear weapon, but would be capable of destroying an entire Russian airbase.
Okay. I'll tell you, I don't like the way the world has evolved. I don't like all this talk of nuclear weapons. I don't like to see the proliferation of nuclear weapons, period. I understand why they want to do that. But this just further destabilizes the entire world. I don't know about you. I grew up during the Cold War when there was the threat of mutually assured destruction. Russia, the United States, the two big dogs, the main nuclear powers. If you fire one ICBM, with, armed with nuclear warheads. The other side launches everything they have. You launch everything you have. Everybody's dead. That's the way the scenario played out, and it was a stalemate. And because you had MAD, mutually assured destruction, as a deterrent, it didn't happen. The nuclear weapons were never used. But now you're seeing these other smaller countries acquire nuclear weapons. And it's very disturbing. And now you're talking, some people are saying Iran could end up with the bomb. Ukraine could have nuclear weapons. Israel has nuclear weapons. Well, they've had them for a long time. Other countries have them too. And now that creates a whole different dynamic. And you need to, manage the risk in an entirely different way. And what we've really seen during this conflict in Ukraine and in Gaza, this Third World War, which, let's face it, is really underway right now. What you're seeing is Russia kind of using Iran as sort of a proxy for, I think, the potential of a nuclear threat and the talk of Iran acquiring a nuclear weapon. And I think Russia is, in a very strange way, maybe even supportive of it. It might even help facilitate it. Very dangerous stuff. I've heard other social media influencers get behind it and say, yeah, why shouldn't Iran have a nuclear weapon too? Well, my whole thing is because it completely destabilizes the entire bloody world. That's why. Before, it would be, either the United States or Russia launching a nuke. And that could set off World War III. And it was pretty, in those terms, it was in its own way simple. You don't do it. But now it seems pretty clear to me that if we're going to have a nuclear war sparked, it will happen because one of these smaller countries will use a nuclear weapon. And where will that leave us? How will the bigger superpowers then respond? How will that be viewed? And how would you justify whatever response it is that you then come back with? I'm sure that the major military powers in the world have war-gamed all of this stuff out. They've got computer modeling, and I'm sure they've come up with a wide range of scenarios that they've tried to map out and figure out how would we respond to this or how would we respond to that. But whatever you do, it's very clear that it's far more complicated now. If Iran got the bomb and nuked Israel, what would the United States then do? What would we do? Would we nuke Iran? And what would Russia do? Would they condemn it? And if they condemned it, but sort of helped facilitate it, what would you do? Would you launch do you see how it kind of gets pretty crazy pretty quick? If they launch a nuke, or Israel launches a nuke, now you've got a nuclear war between those two countries. Now nukes are being launched. What do? Do you sit on the sidelines and hope that you don't get nuked, or do you get involved? I don't know. Maybe we could get an expert on here at some point and explore this new geopolitical nuclear reality, that this madness that we're living right now. It was bad enough after World War II when people were told to just duck and cover. Now, it's like I think people have, that the fear has diminished, and some people I think have they're just resigned to the idea that eventually it's going to happen. They're not even that worried about it, and maybe we could just use tactical nukes. I wonder what that would look like. Blah, blah, blah. Well, I'll tell you. It seems to me that if even one of these things is set off, we're in a very, very, very bad place very quickly, where the entire world could literally be destroyed. So no, I'm not in favor of any proliferation of nuclear weapons. And I hope Donald Trump is smart enough to understand the intricacies of this situation as he embarks on what he has promised will be a very speedy resolution to a very messy, emotional war that has as its resolution, I think, a very complicated pathway. I don't think that it's going to go down as a very simple thing for Trump at all. And I think I'll be very surprised, honestly, if Trump takes power in January and has this thing resolved in a day. I would really doubt it, even in a month. Too much at stake, and too much at stake for the United States as well. Just the issue of Crimea and the port in Sevastopol. It's a key piece of the puzzle that people are largely overlooking. They don't talk about it very much, and yet it's one of the key aspects of this entire war. That's why Putin took the Crimean Peninsula. That's why he built that bridge that pro-Russian pundits have repeatedly said, it's just a civilian bridge. No, it's not. That's a key piece of infrastructure. That's why they built it so strong, to withstand attacks, even missile attacks, drone attacks. It's built in a particular way to withstand those kinds of attacks. Why? Because they use it as a key transportation route, even by rail, which is part of that. Why? Because Sevastopol is a freshwater, deep water, warm water port that is vital to, critical, strategic to Russia, because its other ports are often icebound during the year. But that port doesn't freeze over. So they have access from the Black Sea on down, right through to the Suez Canal, and that gives them access to Asia on the one side, and it also gives them faster access to the Atlantic Ocean and the eastern coastal areas of the United States and Canada. It's strategic, not just for the military of Russia, but also for trade, commerce. It's extremely valuable, vital, strategic port. Gives them access and even in a way control of the Black Sea, leading down into the Suez Canal, as I say, and then those shipping routes all into Asia. And I hear people spouting off all the time about how the United States is only interested in its own selfish interests in the Middle East because of the oil. But what do you think Russia is doing down there? Why do you think they want Crimea? Because of that port, because of everything, all of the access that it gives them down into the Middle East instantly with their ships. And what's going on right now in Yemen with the Houthis? That's a choke point. They're trying to control that entire shipping route. Oh yes, make no mistake, that's what it is about. The United States sent its fleet in there, sent some ships in there to try to preserve free shipping, to keep the shipping routes free for traffic in that zone. But the Houthis keep attacking merchant ships. And now, oh yes, they've even attacked the U.S. Navy. So over the past 48 hours, Yemen's Houthi rebels have intensified their hostilities, targeting U.S. naval assets with a series of missile and drone attacks. The USS Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier operating in the Arabian Sea was reportedly one of the primary targets alongside 2 U.S. Navy destroyers in the Red Sea, which is down further underneath the Black Sea. The Houthis deployed a mix of cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, and drones in those attacks, and the USS Stockdale and USS Spruance were specifically mentioned as having been targeted while passing through the strategic Bab al-Mandab Strait. The U.S. military has confirmed that their destroyers successfully intercepted and neutralized 8 drones, 5 ballistic missiles, and 3 cruise missiles during these engagements. No damage or injuries reported on the American side, showcasing the effectiveness of U.S. naval defense systems. And you're not really hearing about this, even in the mainstream media over here, and there are reasons for that. Strategic. I think because also the Biden administration is afraid. They have been very timid, so they'd rather just not talk about it. It's very interesting how in this day and age, if someone launches, if a country or a hostile force launches missiles at the United States, or even Israel for that matter, at the U.S., it's like it doesn't count because the U.S. is able to shoot the missiles down. But the reality is, what the Houthis did is a very aggressive act. And those ships are in that area, the U.S. naval ships are there to try to secure safe passage for all merchant ships, regardless of flag. But the Houthis are restricting access to those shipping routes, basically trying to deter and prevent any pro-U.S. or pro-Israeli ships from navigating those waters. The Red Sea is a vital shipping lane, and any disruption in that area affects global trade significantly. The Houthis have been targeting shipping routes in retaliation for what they claim is U.S. support for Israel in its conflict with Hamas and Gaza. And these attacks are part of a larger pattern where the Houthis have been launching drones and missiles against shipping and military targets in the area, escalating tensions and posing risks to international maritime security. The United States has condemned those attacks, with the Pentagon describing the attacks as a direct threat to international commerce and maritime security. There's an ongoing discussion about potential responses, which might include further military action against Houthi positions in Yemen. And this escalation comes at a time now with the Houthis firing at these U.S. naval vessels. It comes at a time when the U.S. is looking to maintain stability in the region while dealing with multiple fronts of conflict. The attacks could potentially draw the U.S. further into direct military engagement, complicating efforts to limit the spread of conflict. And of course, Trump, if that phone call was real with Putin, he was also sending a warning to Putin. We're told, saying, hey, he told Putin, just a reminder, Vladimir, that we have a lot of firepower stationed in Europe. Putin doesn't seem to care if it really happened, if it happened at all, if it's just a fake call. Regardless of whether the phone call took place or not, he's basically given the big middle finger to Trump and the United States, and the Houthis are as well. So here's Trump coming into office, preparing to come into office, meeting with Biden in the White House to talk about the transition. And instead of scaling back, the axis of resistance is escalating. So again, I don't think Trump's going to have an easy time of this at all. Shipping companies have been advised to exercise caution, with some rerouting their vessels in that area near Yemen to avoid the area altogether, they're being told. And the U.S. Navy continues to urge American flag vessels to stay vigilant and follow safety protocols. You know, it's in past times, these kinds of actions would have precipitated a pretty severe and swift response from the U.S. military. But again here, with the Biden administration anyway, there's been real timidity. They're afraid of Putin. I think they're even afraid of Iran. Or maybe you could say, some people I would say, would suggest that maybe there's an element within the Democratic Party that is actually supportive of or aligned on some level at least, with Iran and even maybe Hamas. Not to say that the Biden administration has taken that position formally, but I think that there is an element within the Democrat Party when you look at the Squad, when you look at, Ilhan Omar, when you look at Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, there's not just sympathy, but I would say real support for the Palestinian position, then by extension Hamas, then by extension Iran, then by extension you can keep going on until the dots connect all the way back even to Russia. Not to say that the Democrats are necessarily aligned with Russia, but you see that the axis of resistance is comprised of largely the same, basically a lot of the same countries that make up the BRICS nations, which is engaging in a form of economic warfare with the West. And then you talked about the New World Order, and then they came right out during the BRICS conference. And even Vladimir Putin himself referred to the future under BRICS nations, under BRICS, indicated that that was going to be the New World Order. He said it, not me. He said it. Those are his words. He said it in various ways, actually. I should have queued the clips up here tonight, and a lot of people are in denial over that. But I told you weeks ago that that's really what is going on here. You want to talk about the New World Order? That's it. The BRICS nations. The old world order is what we've had. The Western nations, the spread of liberal democracies, or the attempt to spread liberal democracy around the world, Western hegemony. These concepts of freedom, democracy, capitalism, they want none of it. The United Nations. What is the United Nations? You sit there and, the New World Order, it's all George Soros, and there's an element of that. Like, there's globalism there too, sure. But really, the New World Order, Putin said it himself, it's BRICS. They want to replace what we've got and bring in the New World Order. And if they're successful, the Western economy will fail. They want it to collapse. And when that happens, guess what? You'll own nothing. Oh, yeah. You'll own nothing. I don't know how happy you'll be. I won't be very happy at all. Anyway, that's how World War III is shaping up tonight. Believe it or not. And, all that talk about the New World Order, which he referred to it in some instances, Vladimir Putin did during that conference, as the new multipolar world order. Sometimes he would refer to it that way. But a number of world leaders during the BRICS summit referred to the New World Order that they were going to bring in. And that was a PR problem for the information warfare machine in Russia. And so I noticed that even though they were using that language over the course of the conference itself, and it was coming out, and there were all kinds of headlines using that phrase, saying that Putin calls for a new world order. And it was all over the media. But it wasn't playing right. That goes against the whole psychological mind twister information warfare thing here in the West that is designed to make us all hate our own government and believe that our own government is destroying itself and us along with it in order to bring in the New World Order. And there are people within our government who are trying to do that because they're being influenced by foreign governments, as we're seeing in Canada right now, as acknowledged, confirmed by the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, saying that we've got even members of Parliament who are under the effects of foreign influence. And that's why people want to name the names. And this is a big problem, big issue in Canada. And it's surfacing, and we're slowly getting more and more information about it. But make no mistake, that is the New World Order. Sorry, it's just, that's what it is. but people are very confused. They don't want you to know what the real plan is, the people trying to bring it in. So they're trying to make you think that it's us, so that we do the dirty work for them. Are you cluing in yet? Are you cluing in? See, that way, they just use information warfare, twist your brain into a pretzel, and make you destroy yourself. Make us destroy ourselves so they don't have to destroy us. Make us hate ourselves, tear down our system, disrupt things. Just make it disruptive. Just get us all fighting with each other. That's what they're doing, man. Just think about it. Think about it. But it was a PR problem. That's why I noticed about a week and a half ago, the narrative began to shift a little bit. There was damage control in the information warfare front from these foreign governments. And, you can start to begin to identify, even on social media, which social media accounts are actual propaganda accounts, especially on Twitter, because it is so free speechy that includes liars who have their pants on fire hanging from a telephone wire. But a lot of people buy it. Careful out there, folks. There's a lot of mind twisters and narratives, but the thing is, with these guys, it's not just what they're telling you. It's what they are not telling you. They're just giving you little pieces of information that support their narrative. And then it strengthens their argument, but it's the stuff they're not letting you know. The devil is in the details, and the devil is out to bite you on the ass. Be careful.
Maverick News. Fighting for freedom.
Speaking of information warfare, tomorrow's going to be a big day for Alex Jones. Yes, sir. Infowars, that media empire known for its no-holds-barred reporting and controversial founder Alex Jones. It's all on the auction block tomorrow, folks. Now, this isn't just any auction we're talking about here. This is the potential sale of a brand that has been both celebrated and criticized for its bold, often, shall we say, fringe takes on global events and politics. And I know a lot of you love you some Alex Jones and some Infowars. So here are the details. The auction will feature everything from the Infowars studio desk, like everything, like from the desk to the intellectual property rights of the brand itself. Oh yeah. Even the very name Infowars, along with its vast video archive, social media accounts, and even the trademarks for their line of products are up for grabs. It isn't just about the media assets. Bidders will also have the chance to take home even more unusual items like the armored truck and a collection of video cameras used in their broadcasts. So the auction could redefine what Infowars becomes next. Will it continue under the influence of Alex Jones, or will it transform into something entirely new under different ownership? It's valuable. He's got a big following, and he's survived under the boot of censorship in the West. The intrigue doesn't stop here, though. Both supporters and detractors of Alex Jones have expressed interest. There's talk of conservative figures like Roger Stone possibly stepping in. Although I don't know if you think he's got the money, but people are talking about it. I mean, he's got his own set of legal problems, costing him a pretty penny. Or maybe a group of Jones fans pooling resources to keep the spirit of Infowars alive. So, on the flip side, there's interest from parties who might want to pivot the platform towards debunking conspiracy theories or even turning it into a parody site. I don't know. I don't know if that would fly if someone were to spend that kind of cash. Whatever it might go for tomorrow, I don't know, but it seems to me it has substantial value just because of the domain, the traffic, the email lists. You have an audience there, and that's worth something. So the process is going to be private, with bids being submitted behind closed doors. The winning bidder won't be known until the court papers are filed, which means we're all in for a surprise on who might end up steering the ship next. And the auction comes in the wake of legal battles, particularly with the families of Sandy Hook victims, who were awarded, I can't even fathom this, nearly $1.5 billion in defamation lawsuits against Jones for his claims about the tragedy. A massive amount of money. The proceeds from the auction are set to go towards paying those damages. Now, regardless of the outcome, Alex Jones has been vocal about his future plans. He's confident that his voice will continue to resonate, whether through Infowars or elsewhere. And then he said he has posted on social media, watch what already happened when they took Tucker Carlson off Fox News. He got 10 times bigger. So what does this mean for the landscape of alternative media? Well, for those who tune in for the unfiltered takes of Alex, it could be the end of an era or maybe the beginning of a new chapter, possibly under different management or a new direction, depending on who ends up buying it. So we'll be taking note and following this tomorrow through the day, and we will have an update for you on that front tomorrow night. An update on Alex Jones, what happens with the auction, and the information war, which is a big part of what honestly really is a third world war raging right now. And it's pretty clear to me that what we are involved in here is probably just the early stages, just the beginning of a much broader global conflict. I do pray, though, that Donald Trump is successful in bringing these wars to a quick, speedy resolution, as he has promised. I do wish him success in that regard. And I think that he would like to have the Nobel Peace Prize. And if he's successful in spreading peace instead of war, then I think we can all be in favor of that. I guess hopefully it's something that is achieved in a manner that is fair and humane. And on that note, folks, I'm going to sign off on this 13th day of November, 2024. Love you guys. I will be back tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern, on the flip side.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.